We're Emmanuel and
Busola, and we are so delighted to bring you the Blossom couple.
almost 4 decades ago, I told Busola that I loved her and I would like to spend the rest of my life with her. And she said yes.
Yes, I did say yes.
That was it. And as we began the journey of marriage, we asked the Lord for a home filled with His love and joy, enough to share with others.
And to make ours an example of marriage as God intends it to be enjoyed and not endured. And God answered both prayers.
Yeah, we can't keep it to ourselves.
No, we can't. We shouldn't.
It is God's goodness, and we want to share it with others.
Yes, we are always happy to share our story. Uncountable other couples enjoy this wonderful adventure called marriage. On the Blossom Couple, we gather together with these friends, amazing people, to share our stories of marriage rooted in the love of God through Jesus Christ.
Let's meet the couple of the day.
Steve and Caroline Foreman.
Yeah, the Foremans.
I would have said our guests, but we are the guests in their home. But we're speaking to Steve and Caroline Foreman. They are friends, we're church members together, and they are also our city group leaders. In our church, we have what we call city group, that's the small group. So they have been our city group leaders for nearly 13 years. Look how long we've been coming. It's been said that friendship is the most important factor in marriage, and we'd like you to speak about that.
Then the starting point is our friendship with God and our relationship with God. And then out of that relationship with God, we've made a commitment to one another, a covenant. And I think that's the starting point. That's the foundation. And obviously, friendship within that is really important.
You're right about that, Steve.
Yeah, you've made a commitment to one another. And I think that's a kind of really critical foundation in marriage.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because I think at times it would be easier to recognise a friendship in a marriage and in our marriage than at other times. At times, that commitment is always central to our marriage, and on the basis of that, we have, that came from a friendship and continues to have friendship at the centre of it. But that probably has looked different through the years, and there's times where either through busyness or seasons of life that just that commitment to be a family together and that's a priority has equally been central. And the other thing I'd say is that I think through our marriage, friendship can look different than it does with other friendships. I think to the sort of playground school mentality of your best friend who you link arms with, and nobody can come, and they're the person that you'll always invite to your birthday party and you will always have shared activities with. Whereas I think actually in a marriage, some of those shared activities are with other friends, because they're the friends that have those shared activities and shared interests with you more than maybe that your family do. And actually through the advice of our pastor, I remember her saying it's okay to have the enjoyment of company of others, and particularly it's okay to not share one another's interests so deeply, albeit it's really important to invest in one another's interests and be partners in that. And Steve's very good at joining in with things that I would choose to do, such as go to the beach or go on sunny holidays, which wouldn't necessarily be his choice of activity. But equally recognising that sometimes I enjoy those trips out with the children and with other families and other friends, particularly in sort of the children's social lives, if you like, that Steve isn't a part of, partly because of the timings in our lives, and that's okay too. And I think it's a different sort of friendship in that it's like we've referred to, the deep commitment and a sense of always being there for one another, and I guess being each other's best friend in the sense of an advocate for one another. And we've always sought to speak the best of one another, even though we may not be thinking the best of one another. at the time.
That's a very important point. If I could just speak on that, when you say speak the best of one another, when you are not necessarily thinking the best of the other person, how does that work?
I think for me, through the years, particularly when I worked in a well, certainly I worked in a school and maybe the staff room conversation. I think we live in a society where, even through just talking about real life, people have their grumbles about their family, and there's a reality in that. Family life's hard, married life can be hard, and we can disagree, or we can have different just approaches to things, and we can be let down by one another. But I've always sought to not air that particularly publicly. I would say, however, we do have good friends who are other married couples, and there are times where I would talk to them about that, but I would be very selective and still very cautious with my words about how I expressed any challenges that we were going through, because I think it's important to prioritise marriage and to talk about marriage as being a good thing, and I think it's very easy to talk each other down rather than talk each other up in the world. And
I think the kind of appreciating the spiritual dynamic is really important as well, in terms of relationships are really important for God, and He has made us relational, and we know that there is an enemy who attacks relationships, who seeks to divide and split rather than bring together. And so again, sort of, sometimes it's hard in the heat of the moment, but kind of, I remember reading a book which I found really helpful, where someone was talking about, the kind of inner dialogue that goes on sometimes when you have this struggle of thinking, oh, he always does that, or she always says that. Mm-hmm. And I remember the author saying, no, they don't, and sort of recognising that lie. And I think that's really helpful, that you kind of recognise that these thoughts can appear in your head, and the sort of frustrations, but having the wherewithal and the sort of spiritual understanding to say, no, they don't. They don't always do that. And that kind of believing the best and speaking the best, I think, is appreciating the spiritual dynamic that's going on. I think is really helpful in that.
Yeah, I think you just touched on one thing: believing the best. How do you do that?
I think. I think one of the really interesting things in our relationship is we're very different, aren't we? And I think, over the kind of course of our marriage, we appreciate that more and more. And I think that's why having that commitment is really important to be able to explore that. So I think I'm much more cognitive rather than emotional. So I think that probably helps me in this area, and it's a kind of, it can be more challenging in other areas, just to be more in control of my thoughts. Okay. So I think I probably find that maybe, I don't know, easier, or I've kind of worked at that over the years to kind of, whatever might be sort of a challenging situation in the circumstance, to have that kind of reality. I think probably I've kind of been able to learn that, because it's sort of rooted in my thoughts.
Can you think of an example?
Certainly, that's what I was going to ask.
I think there's both Steve's general positivity in life that helps. I think you have a deep down conviction that things will be okay. I'm more likely to be somebody that sees in any scenario that plays things out.
Like, how is it going to happen?
Yeah, well, how is something going to happen? Or maybe, say maybe something happens with one of the children, and I think, what if? Whereas Steve's probably the other end of the spectrum, where he would just genuinely believe that it will be okay. And
is that because of your faith, or?
It's probably temperament, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, one of the children coughs, and we've clearly got to go and get them a COVID test or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, that's probably just a cough. It'll be okay. And I think that's just temperament. And there's pros and cons with that, aren't there?
For me, I think I can relate action to motive, in terms of, I have to be careful not to think just because they did that doesn't mean that. So I don't know, maybe Steve, rushed their head out of the house and left me behind picking the bags up, or something like that, and it would be easy to think, well, he's thoughtless, he doesn't care, whatever. He doesn't care about me, he's left me to do it all, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, like you said, that's just not true. That isn't a truth. It is true. I know he cares.
So you're speaking to yourself in that sense.
Yes, and I think that the most important thing is just to stop those inner conversations.
Right.
And I have to say, stopping the outer conversations feeds into stopping the inner conversations.
Yeah.
Because I think even though I think there's a difference between fact and truth, and I guess this is all in the context of friendship, isn't it? Which is we are good friends, and like I say, that looks different than a school friendship maybe, but we are allies, we're companions, and that matters above all else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to some extent, for me, I'm thinking, well, another phrase I think that was given to me when the children were growing up is about picking your battles. In terms of something happens, and in a children's setting, that is what fight am I going to make about this? Does it matter if they pick their toys up or not in this moment? And I have to choose how much.
And that happens to be helpful in the marriage relationship too. It sounds quite helpful.
In that, say that, you've left me behind. I'm picking up the bags.
Yeah.
I guess I have choices there. I shout and say, "Oi, come back, you've left me behind, that's a terrible thing to do." No. I think that's one extreme. Another is I pick up the bags and I grumble all the way out to the car.
So how does picking your battle help in that?
Because I think it depends how much it matters in that moment. And so in that scenario, I need to think, well, how much does this matter?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is Steve just happens to have forgotten,
Yeah.
I will pick them up, I will go, and all will be left. If it's like, do you know what, I think it would really help me if, when we are heading out on holiday or when we're heading out, that Steve did help me with the bags, because A, it either really helps me, or B, it really helps me feel cared about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then, and again, this is the idea of friendship, that we can speak to one another in a way that helps. And I think what I've learned over the years is sometimes it's not even about whether this is right or wrong. And for me, I'm someone who fights for things that are right or wrong. So I've had to learn that just because I think it's right or wrong, it may just be a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
But even so, it's okay to say to Steve, it really helps me if. But even in the case, choosing to make a battle of it doesn't help.
So what I'm getting from there is that it matters if you're just ranting about it, like, you left me, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, or this will be helpful. So if you did this, it will help me. And another thing that came out from what you said, Caroline, is that stopping the external, the external conversation helps
To stop the inner thinking, the reflections.
Could you share a bit more about that?
So I think for me, it's layers. So I think it's, and I think I'm fairly sure over the years that I'm much better at not getting involved in those external complaints about my family. And then it works inwards, because if I'm out with friends or whatever and I'm regularly involved in I'm going to complain about what my husband has or hasn't done today, or something of that nature, then that keeps that in my thinking. If we get back to the example of the bags in the hallway, if I just, in terms of the picking the battles, if I decided it was a one-off, it really didn't matter. I picked the bags, I put them in the car and thought, he just forgot. He didn't notice, that's okay, let's get on with our day. Or I could arrive out with friends and I could say, Steve didn't pick the bags up, we left in such a rush, I had to carry it all, I'm exhausted, And I've kept that up in my thinking.
Yeah.
Which then means that, and then I think what can happen, and I think we can help each other as friends here, is we have an opportunity as to what we do in that scenario. I could say to Priscilla, and she could say, I'm sorry that's happened to you today, let's get on and enjoy the day. She doesn't necessarily need to correct my thinking in that moment, but she just puts a stopper that says, do you know, these things happen, let's leave them.
And I think there's that kind of natural element of it, but again, I think there's a sort of a spiritual dynamic as well. And so I'm a sort of a big fan of like taking practical action, even if you don't feel like it, because I think just choosing to get up in the morning when your alarm clock goes off, I think can really set the tone for your whole day, because what it's saying is that I'm not going to be dictated to by my kind of wants and my desires and my body, and it's that kind of living from the inside out that I'm going to be my soul is going to be directed by my spirit, which is then going to direct what I do, rather than the other way around. I'm not going to be dictated to by my situations and my circumstances.
Okay.
So I think, you know, choosing not to speak that out is a kind of spiritual choice as well as a kind of practical common sense thing.
Yeah.
About the external conversation could also be between just the two of us. So I stop saying those things to Emmanuel, and like, I don't say, "Oh, look how you left the." At that moment, stopping that external conversation could also help bring peace on the inside. And I take some time to reflect and then choose: do I want to speak about it or not?
Yeah, and you can speak about it in the context of, you know, how you speak about it is not just about I have a complaint, I wish to make a complaint about your behaviour, but about, you know, that continuing to learn about each other and what blesses one another, and saying, actually, it would really bless me if you did this. And I think we, you know, learned that. So I think you kind of helped me rein up. You know, I sort of probably have a sense of humour, and I kind of quite like making jokes and things like that. And I think Caroline's really helped me about, actually, when you said that didn't bless me, and, you know, how we sort of make, you know, kind of use humour in front of the children and stuff like that. And that's been really, you know, useful in terms of when maybe something that I've just thought was a throwaway funny remark, actually, you know, like Caroline really didn't appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I think it's another way of being friends. Actually, I think sometimes you are your best and your worst in front of your husband or wife and in front of your family. But equally, sometimes I think your family are the only people who can say something to you about an element of behaviour that other people might not. And I even say it with our children sometimes. Our children are very different not dissimilar to the way that we're very different. And I've often said to them that the way you treat one another, if they feel they can either correct that or comment on that, will help you in your other relationships, because one of them is more vocal than the other and will push until they get an answer, and the other one gets to a point. I see some familiarity, and the other one gets to the point that they do not want to answer. They don't have the headspace. They don't have the energy, and this can result in, you know, an explosion of emotion or something like that. And I've said to the other child, I said, your friends will rein themselves in. If they are getting annoyed with you, they may not react in the way that your sibling has done, but they may feel the same. And it's really helpful to be able to say to one another, I just don't, when this happened, this is how I was feeling, because people are different. And so learning to operate in a family and in a marriage actually helps us with our other relationships, because we can learn from one another, or even comment on each other's behaviour when out and about, to say, oh, do you know when that happened, your spouse may say to you things that other people may have been thinking. And actually learning to take that from one another, I think, is really valuable. That is part of being one another's friends. And equally, we can learn, I found that we can learn from one another into thinking, well, actually, my friend or my work colleague is more like my spouse than myself. So maybe to say to them, oh, how would you be blessed? No, it's not to guarantee they're exactly the same as that person, but to say, oh, maybe I need to work with them on a project, and I know they need some headspace and some thinking space, whereas I would be naturally one to want to work in it all together. I might come to Steve and say, well, what would, if you were in that scenario, what would bless you? And that enables you to learn about other people from your spouse.
And it's true what you said, that your family sees the best and the worst of you, so they are able to give you feedback. And Emmanuel and I would often say that to each other. I'll say to him, well, you are the only one who can see this about me, or I'm the only one who can see this about you, because nobody else is saying it. What inspires your continuing friendship?
I mean, I think it's the basic things like, enjoying being with one another, I think is really good. And I think, in a marriage, particularly when there are children, I think, you could see, oh, well, you have to work harder when there are other people around, like having children. But then equally, I think, like, for us, our children bring out different bits in us. And so you see new things in your husband and your wife because you see how they relate to the children. And it's that, sometimes people talk about friendship and talk about, you kind of have face-to-face friendship, but you also have side-by-side friendship. And you kind of, it's like just the two of you, but also when you're doing other things, you see different aspects of people. And I think that certainly for me, I think I've seen different things in Caroline, things that I really value and really appreciate in how she is with the children that, I think is really good for our friendship.
Yeah.
I think the whole, we like being with each other is really is an important concept. And I think, again, we're coming into a new season in terms of our children in that they don't need us quite so much, and occasionally we find ourselves with a free afternoon when they're off out with friends, which is
just the two of you.
The two of us and the gardening and the housework.
So you're beginning to practice emptiness.
But I think it's thinking, okay, what do we enjoy in that? And we have tried to make the most of those times in terms of sometimes be real and it's life and the children are out, so let's get on with the DIY with this lovely house project that we have. But equally sometimes it's been quite spontaneous. We've gained it. We said, do you want to go grab a coffee? Do we want to go for a walk? Let's go for lunch somewhere. Nothing, extravagant necessarily, but just that idea that, we're friends and it's okay just to go and enjoy one another's company. In fact, it's important to go and enjoy one another's company. And I think I sort of touched on it before, saying we have very different interests at times, but equally try to find some common interests. So we do enjoy eating out together, which is something we have passed on to our children. So that is becoming an expensive hobby.
I was going to say that. How's that to the budget?
Actually, touching on budget is we have learned things that are important to us, and when I say eating out is important to us, but it's something we both enjoy. And so there are at times where we have prioritised that sort of sensibly within our budget. We wouldn't extravagantly go and sort of eat somewhere beyond our means, but it may feel like we said, we value this and we see this as something that does our relationship good.
Yeah.
And so we may put in aside gradually in order to do that so that we can go and sort of treat ourselves. In the same way that people maybe do the same with time or other things, that if there are things that are important, then we work to prioritise that and to see, and I think try to see that's valuable and not a waste of money.
Of course,
That actually, I think at times, again, if budgets were tight or something, and so I think I would encourage people that whatever it is that's valuable, I think even like time-wise as well, so we've learned what energises one another. Again, as being friends, and that we've prioritised that. So for Steve, sometimes that is just having a day that's got fewer plans in it and a bit more relaxed and without a sort of agenda, whereas I would be someone that starts the day with a list of sort of to-dos, both in terms of jobs and enjoyment.
When you said that about Steve, I said, that's just like me.
And then I'm like, so what's the plan for this? Plan?
But equally, there are things that I've mentioned, getting out to the beach. That is something that really energises me. And so there are times where life has either been busy or, dare I say, mundane in terms of the Monday to Friday or even the Monday to Sunday run of life. That actually we've prioritised time-wise what is good for us and what is good for our family to sort of look for the opportunity or even make the opportunity to do that.